And welcome to Project Management Introduction. This is a first class of a series of classes that we offer for project management. This one we're going to review a broad range of topic areas just as a way to introduce the subject matter and hopefully to also build some basic skills for you. So, first thing I will do will give you a little bit of an introduction about myself. And then after that, I'll go into an outline of the course material we'll cover in this class. And then finally, we'll get into the class. Okay, let's go. So this is a map of where I was born. Now I live there less than half a year when I'm not in Vietnam. And does anyone recognize where this is? This is the United States of America. I was born down near the coast, the southern coast, where you see the blue ocean next to the curve on the left. And now I live near the center part of the map. Do you see the yellow dot? That's where I live now. Click or use your down arrow to zoom in a little bit on the map. Now I assume the map has expanded and you can clearly see the yellow dot slightly to the left of the center. That's where I live now when I'm not in Vietnam. If you haven't guessed by now, my name is Loren Lancaster. My name is shown up on top of the slide. As you can see, the yellow dot is roughly in the center of the square that is a state. That state is called Colorado. There are some very beautiful, very rugged, very tall mountains to the left of the yellow dot. And to the right, there are flat plains that are relatively uninteresting compared to the mountains. It's a very beautiful state and a fun place for travelers to visit. Here's some pictures from where I come from in Colorado. You can see there are nearby mountains that are just incredibly beautiful, and we have streams and rivers, beautiful natural landscapes, and of course we have internationally famous resorts where we can enjoy living. All right, I'll tell you a little bit more about myself before we start here. As you can see, I like to play guitar, I like to sing, I like to write music, and occasionally I perform. I really enjoy doing that in Vietnam. I also like to cook. I cook almost every day, especially nowadays. And I also enjoy doing a wide variety of outdoor activities like riding horses or trekking, hiking, fishing, camping. I really love to fly in the mountains as well. That's one of my greatest passions. All right, now we're going to start our section on project management. So the first question I would like to ask you to think about is, what is project management? And frankly, I could give you several formal definitions for project management. They're readily available in project management literature. But the one I like the most, I'll share with you, is from the Project Management Association of Japan. And it was described in 2005 and remains today to be one of the better definitions. It basically says this: a project refers to a value creation undertaking based on a specific mission, which is completed in a given or agreed time frame and under constraints, including resources and associated circumstances. So that's the definition of project management. Now you notice it has a few key things in here about value creation. It refers to a specific mission, an agreed time frame, constraints, external circumstances, and things of that nature. We're going to be talking a lot about that during this class. But basically, this is the definition that I think I enjoy working with the most. Another way to answer the question, what is project management, is to talk about the attributes and environment of project management itself, as opposed to coming up with a very simple, concise definition. So on the next two slides, we're going to take that approach to defining project management. First, I'm going to give you 5 specific attributes that are pretty common among all projects in project management. In the next slide, I'll go through some attributes, 4 attributes, which are more environmental in nature and related to the management of projects. The first attribute to consider is unique. Projects are usually very unique. In other words, the project has usually never been done before, or if it has been done before in a similar fashion, it is still designed to produce an outcome that has never been achieved before. So in this regard, projects and project management are about doing something that is fairly unique. It is not production. It is not doing something that has been done many times before, or doing something routinely, day by day, every single day. Another attribute of project management is that projects are temporary. The organization that is established for the project, including the people and the resources, facilities, they're all temporarily established and maintained until the project comes to its conclusion, either successful or canceled. Financing and budgets for projects are also temporary. They are put in place to finance the cost of operating the project, carrying out its activities, buying equipment that's necessary. But once all that is completed, the budget's done and the finances are no longer available. And duration. Of course, temporary and duration, 2 words that go together. The project only has a specific life. Almost all projects have some sort of schedule. In fact, that's all we're going to talk about is projects with schedules. And those schedules are not infinite. They have a specific life, and the duration of a project is temporary. The next attribute of project management to consider is focused. Projects and the management of those projects are focused. We have only one product or one service that we are expecting to deliver, or maybe a very limited number of products or services that we will deliver as a result of the project. This is not a continuing flow of results or services or products. It is a once and done activity. The fourth attribute that we're considering in defining project management is business case. What we mean by business case is that we can describe what the benefit is of achieving the outcome and the mission of the project. And then further, we can look at the cost of executing the project in order to deliver that value. And we can then conclusively show that the value created by executing the project is worth more, hopefully significantly more, than the cost associated with executing the project. This is an analysis that can be performed in great detail and very precisely so that at the outset of the project, we have a clear business case. We can clearly state that the value created by executing the project will be substantially greater than the cost of the project. The fifth and last attribute we're considering on this slide for project management is emergence. Emergence. What that means is things emerge as the project transpires. So normally when we start a project, we have a very clear understanding of what the high-level benefits are that we are trying to achieve by executing the project. We also normally have a clear business case, and we have an organizational structure and a budget. Many details have been set in place before the project even starts. However, as I said before, this is a unique experience. This is something that has never been accomplished before or executed in a way that is very, very similar. So we are stepping into the unknown. On this next slide, we're going to talk about 4 environmental factors that affect project management. We've already touched on some of these concepts, so they shouldn't sound new at this point for the most part. But we'll go into it from a project management perspective as opposed to a definition of the attributes related specifically to projects. The first attribute we're discussing in regards to the environment of project management itself is uncertainty. So as we discussed before, a project is something that's unique and usually done only for the first time and the only time. We're stepping into the unknown situation and we're trying to accomplish a vision or a dream as opposed to reproducing what's been done before. So in many regards, managing a project requires courage. The project manager needs to be able to feel comfortable with working in the unknown and moving forward into the future to achieve the objectives of the program, and to make sure that the costs of the program stay on track with the original plan, and to keep the time frame, the duration of the project, as tightly controlled as possible so that the project can be completed on schedule. A second attribute of project management is change. We need to be comfortable with uncertainty and be willing to address a need for change. Many times during a project, we'll have things change that affect the project directly, or even the project itself and the objectives of the project can change. So the project manager needs to be comfortable with a very dynamic and ever-changing process. To do this well, the project manager has to develop a set of tools to deal with change. They're called change management. We'll talk a little bit more about that in this class. But in general, change management involves addressing a need that is not being met well, determining how to address the need going forward, and then going through a relatively formal process to describe and adopt the needed change, as well as finally to implement it. The third attribute to consider for project management is social construction. In social construction, what we're talking about are people, groups of peoples, systems of peoples, and how they have complex interactions with each other. A simple one-on-one dynamic can be complicated in itself, but by the time you get to groups and large groups and groups within groups, the interactions become very dynamic and very complex. Managing a project, of course, all boils down to managing people. And so managing people requires some understanding, knowledge, and skill in addressing social construction. The project manager needs to be aware of all of the personal and interpersonal exchanges and dynamics associated with that, and whether they're positive in nature or disruptive in nature, even destructive potentially, and learn how to manage those, deal with them well in order to manage a project to successful completion. The final attribute we're considering for project management is integration. Integration is the art and skill of weaving a project together in all of its pieces and systems and technology and knowledge in a way that it operates as a seamless team toward the objectives of the program. The project manager must understand the challenges and issues being addressed by each group, each facet of the project, each person, each team, each set of resources. Then the project manager must be able to integrate all of them together so they work seamlessly as one big team accomplishing a single purpose goal. On this side, we're further defining project management in a graphical format. You can see I'm plotting two axes, volume and variety. On the volume axis, we're representing the quantity of items that are produced. In other words, at high volume, we're producing large numbers of the same activity or same product, same service, and near zero, we're producing no more than one. On the variety axis, we're going from low variety up to high variety. And in this case, we're talking about the variety of attributes of the product or outcome that is produced. So in this case, you can see that we have a elongated ellipse that describes the domain of project management, and up to the top, production. Projects going from high variety, low volume, all the way up to low variety, high volume for repetitive operations. As we're showing with the arrow, we go from a very high risk situation to a very low risk situation as we move from high variety down to low variety. Also low volume to high volume. With high volume, we have the opportunity to learn quickly to improve the quality of not only what we're producing, but also the way and the method in which we produce it. And so the risk is reduced dramatically. With a project, however, we normally have a unique situation. We're producing something only once, and it's the first time that it's ever been produced. So as you can see in this graph, in the far right hand corner, we have a circle that is labeled first timers. First timers means it's the very first time that we have actually ever done what is to be accomplished on the project. So first timers may be only timers. As we go from super high variety, low volume to a little bit less variety, a little bit higher volume, we describe it as, but. In other words, it's as what we did before, but it is quite different. Many projects fall into this little circle. In other words, once we've learned how to develop a project, how to manage it, we will oftentimes use the knowledge we've gained to do the next generation of some product or service, or something very similar by using the same type of project management methodologies. So it's as we did before, but it is different because we are producing something new. This is higher in volume because we could possibly be doing multiple projects over many years or even simultaneously. And then finally, the third circle, roughly in the middle of the plot, says painting by numbers. What this means, painting by numbers, it refers to a painting that you do by simply putting colors inside of pieces of the painting, each color represented by a number. Each piece has the number printed inside of it, and you just simply paint the color inside the piece that's labeled with the number. Now, this analogy applies to project management because many times we have a well-defined structure and methodology for managing a project, and we simply use that process and methodology over and over again to produce a higher volume of products or services. I've seen this happen in some of the companies I've worked in where we produce semiconductor products. And in most cases, each project looks the same, and it produces a brand new, once and done, never done before product, but we use the same project management methodology over and over to produce new products. So the point of this slide is that project management normally falls in the category of very high variety, everything's different each time, and very low volume. And as we move up the axis in volume and down the axis in variety, we're moving more and more toward what's called repetitive operations. And eventually, we get to the point where what we're doing, what we're producing, is pretty much the same thing over and over again. This is like producing thousands and hundreds of thousands of cell phones, for example, or processing billing and receiving accounting activity over and over again each month. So it's quite different from all other types of operations when we think about the variety and the volume attributes of a project. The last way we will define project management is by examining how project management fits into a larger context. In this case, inside the framework of a standard company. So normally a company is headed by its board of directors and managed on a day-to-day basis by the president or CEO or director. Reporting directly to the president will be vice presidents. In this case, we're showing several vice presidents, each of which manage a separate line function. Vice President number 1 manages marketing. Vice President number 2 manages sales. Vice President number 3 manages finance. Vice President number 4 operations, etc. Now, the difference between a standard company organization, as we defined, and a project is that the project includes expertise, usually from a wide variety of line functions. So since a project is temporary, each line function vice president normally assigns individuals within their organization to work on the project. Those individuals report on a temporary basis to the project manager. If the project is large enough, it would be sub-project managers. So the project is built by bringing people and equipment resources from each of the various line functions to form a temporary team, a project team, that executes the project. Once that project is complete, the people now go back to their original organization and report again back into the structure that each of the line functions have. With this view of project management, we can now start to imagine the roles that project managers play in running a project. One of the key pieces here that's demonstrated is that the skills that are required to execute a project come from a wide variety of disciplines. In this example, we're showing marketing, sales, finance, operation, and purchasing. And the second area of expertise that's required is more political in nature. Normally, the project manager is executing something that's critical to the success of the company. So on a temporary basis, the project manager is reporting directly to the president or the CEO, and the resources of people and equipment are coming from the various vice presidents. So the project manager needs to be able to work really well with the senior executives of the company, not only in reporting to the president, but also in making sure that the vice presidents are aware of how things are developing on the project, and also making sure that the vice presidents continue to provide support. Otherwise, the project will not be able to execute well without this political support from the president and all the various vice presidents. Now we'll talk about the pros and cons of becoming a career project manager. There is a difference between an employee who manages a project occasionally as opposed to a person who dedicates their entire career path to managing projects. Oftentimes, people like this have specialized certifications that professionally designate them as project managers. Then otherwise, they are people who simply develop the skills on the job and become very good at it. Here we'll go through a list of why some people would choose to be project manager as a career path as opposed to not. We will first focus on the pros. In other words, the reasons why it is beneficial to consider a career path in project management. Being a project manager oftentimes is a stepping stone to promotion, bonuses, and higher pay. Stepping stone means it is a path by which we can move through in our lives, which will accelerate our direction. So in this case, we're saying because we work on projects which are critical in nature to the company, we will have high visibility with senior management. Senior management will be more inclined to reward us for achieving the objectives of our projects. So oftentimes, being a project manager leads to promotions, bonuses, and higher pay. Managing a project usually provides a strong sense of accomplishment. The project is focused, it has a narrow time frame, it usually has very high visibility, is very important to the company, and is extremely engaging. Once the project is complete and the objectives and mission are accomplished, more often than not, there is a strong sense that the team that has worked on the project has accomplished something very significant. In other words, they have a strong sense of accomplishment. This is quite different from someone who works on a job that is fairly routine, day after day, even if the job is very challenging in terms of the required skills. So, a great benefit of being a project manager is you develop a strong sense of accomplishment over and over again in your job. As a project manager, you have the opportunity to have a wide degree of variation in your job experience. You get to see many different aspects of the company, experience many different relationships. You also get to enjoy working on a wide variety of objectives and goals for the company. It makes for a much richer job experience than simply doing the same job every single day for years and years. Another pro of becoming a project manager is you have the opportunity to learn about many disciplines and functions. The reason is because you are managing a project of people that includes a wide variety of disciplines. On a day-to-day basis, while managing the project, you'll be listening to the activities of each of these people. You'll be asking questions about their progress, about their challenges. You'll be learning how to integrate all of the various disciplines and functions together in order to build a complete team. Through this process, you can in fact develop a wide range of skills and learn many different disciplines. The last pro that we're mentioning here on this slide is the opportunity to affect change and impact. Clearly, running a project itself is a vehicle by which we can affect change and have an impact on the company. More often than not, this is substantial, and it is a project manager that enjoys the benefit of knowing that they are the one who led the effort to cause the change and the impact. This also shows up in the relationships that are developed with senior management. Senior management will oftentimes come to the project manager who they have developed a relationship with and ask them for their opinion on subject matter that is critical to the direction of the company. Next, we will consider the cons of being a project manager. A career project manager is not always a great opportunity or a great career path. It has a lot of problems and challenges too. So let's consider those so that we have a balanced perspective. The first con that we will consider, or negative aspect about being a project manager, is that it requires that the project manager have a high degree of skills in company politics. This is normally not something that we consider developing along our career path when we enter the job market. But in order to be a good, effective project manager, we need to be able to address the political framework on which we're working and managing our projects. This is a very difficult skill to acquire and oftentimes requires some sort of coaching or mentorship with someone who has already learned these skills. A second reason why we may not wish to become a project manager is that it requires a high tolerance for ambiguity, a high tolerance for uncertainty and risk. Now, all of these things can be tolerated to a certain degree by almost anyone. However, with projects of increasing value and duration and complexity, the risk and the ambiguity and uncertainty increases exponentially. Once we get to large-scale projects that require tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars investment, the project stress due to ambiguity and uncertainty can become very high. So project management is not for everyone. It's not something that everyone can be adapted to easily. It's normally something that requires a good deal of personal tolerance around these ideas. And it also requires that over time we develop a higher degree of comfort with the ambiguity, uncertainty, and risk with projects in order to become very effective project managers. Another drawback to being a project manager is that you really have no legitimate authority, especially depending on your organization. What I mean by no legitimate authority is everyone who is working for you on the project knows that the project is temporary. They know that your responsibility will expire once the project no longer exists. They also know that once the project no longer exists, they will return to their host organization and report back to the boss that they normally have. So under this circumstance, you as a project manager are in a little bit of a challenge. You have authority as a project manager, but you really don't have long-term ability to manage the people on your project. This makes for managing the people side of the business quite challenging. But at the same time, if you're very good at working with people and motivating them to focus on a very clear objective, it actually turns out to be not so difficult to manage people, even though you don't have a legitimate authority. There are certain things you can do to improve this, and we'll talk more about them later. Another challenge to being a career project manager is that you are disconnected from your core technical skills. Most people who become project managers originally were highly skilled at some technical discipline. They were not only very good at it, but they were very good at managing small projects and small teams around those technical skills. This is how people naturally evolve into becoming project managers. Eventually, somebody in senior management notices that the individual not only has good technical skills, but they also exhibit good leadership skills, and they also shows some degree of political skills, and as a result, they are probably suitable to becoming a project manager. These kinds of people ultimately have to deal with one challenge, and that is increasingly they are moving away from their core competency in the technical skills that enabled them to become successful in their company to begin with. This is a very uncomfortable feeling, especially for people who become project managers who were recently some sort of technical officer or technical leader. In fact, in many cases, most people don't make that transition because they really don't want to leave behind their technical competency and they would rather not be a project manager. The final con that we're going to discuss in regards to project manager career paths is the problem is we are perceived by our peers as not having a real job. And that's just a little bit hard to deal with if you're a project manager. More often than not, as we said earlier, you originally were a technical leader in your field, and you probably had several friends who were also technical leaders, your peers. Your respect from them was primarily based upon your ability to perform your technical capabilities. But as a project manager, people who have technical skills normally have a very difficult time understanding the value that you bring to the project. They gain the impression that you really don't have a real job, that you're not actually doing anything of value. And in fact, young project managers who understand the value of their technical skills oftentimes have difficulty seeing their value as project managers themselves. And it can lead to some questioning as to whether or not they've made the right choice in becoming a project manager.